Okay, so think for a moment about all the amazing tech you use every
Mm,
day,
right.
stuff we just take for granted, right?
hmm
Now picture this, out in the Arizona desert, north of Phoenix. Something huge is happening, something that's going to fundamentally shape that tech. We're diving deep today into the new TSMC, that's Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company facility being built out there.
It really is pretty remarkable, the scale of it. TSMC isn't just, another company. They're the absolute giants of making semiconductors, the sort of invisible engine powering our entire digital lives. So this move into Arizona, it's a really big deal in the industry, a seismic event, you could say.
Exactly. And we've waded through a stack of articles really trying to pull out the core insights on this massive project. Our goal here is simple: to give you a clear, engaging picture of what's happening in Arizona, why it matters, without getting totally lost in the weeds. So when you see those headlines pop up about chip manufacturing, you'll actually know the real story behind them and why it actually impacts you.
Yeah, let's start with just the sheer size and the ambition here, our sources. They're calling what's emerging a vast technological city.
Mhm.
And when you look at the timeline and the level of technology they're talking about, that description really hits home.
Absolutely. They're targeting high volume production for the first half of 2025. I mean, that's coming up fast. But it's not just the speed, it's the sophistication. What they'll actually be making, that's the really significant part. Initially, it's 4 nanometer chips,
Yeah.
which, okay, that's already incredibly advanced. But here's the kicker. The plan is to move to unprecedented 2 nanometer processes before the end of this decade.
Right. And to put that 2 nanometer thing in perspective, a nanometer is 1 billionth of a meter. Think of it like the width of just a few atoms stacked together. Engineering at that scale is almost mind-bending. And these tiny, tiny, yet incredibly powerful chips, as the sources keep pointing out, they're the foundation, the fundamental building blocks for everything from your smartphone, yeah, but also the most advanced AI. It's not just about making things a bit faster. These leaps in nanometer scale, they unlock totally new capabilities.
hmm And it's not just about faster phones, though. That's nice too. This project is being called a critical juncture for, what was the phrase? Strategic resilience and geopolitical maneuvering.
Yeah.
That sounds like there's a lot more going on than just building a big factory.
Well, yeah, if you zoom out, look at the bigger global picture, you can totally see why. Historically, the U.S. has been really heavily reliant on semiconductor production overseas, particularly East Asia. This new Arizona facility,
Hmm.
it's fundamentally about boosting technological sovereignty, bringing a big chunk of that vital manufacturing capability back onto U.S. soil. Think of it as shoring up the supply chain, making it more secure, more independent for these absolutely crucial components.
And the money involved. It's just staggering. We're talking up to $6.6 billion in the CPS and Science Act, plus potentially another $5 billion in government loans.
hmm
And that's before you even count TSMC's own massive investment, which could top $165 billion in total. This isn't just putting up walls. It's building an entire ecosystem, innovation, production, the whole package.
Right, and that huge investment really highlights the geopolitical side of things too. This Arizona facility isn't just, local economic development. It's being described as actively reshaping global alliances,
hmm
specifically forging stronger ties between the US and Taiwan in this super critical industry.
Okay, and there's this term that keeps popping up in the reading, a non-red supply chain. What exactly is that trying to do?
So essentially, the idea behind a non-red supply chain is creating some independence from technological and economic influence, specifically concerning China, in these really vital sectors like semiconductors. By building up significant manufacturing capacity within the U.S., the goal is to create a more secure, more geographically diverse supply of these essential components. You could almost think of it as building a parallel supply route, maybe, one that's more secure geographically for critical tech.
And that ties directly into this whole ongoing conversation about Taiwan's silicon shield, right? That comes up a lot in the discussions we looked at.
Precisely. For a long time, Taiwan's dominance in making these advanced chips. Well, some people saw that as a kind of deterrent, a buffer against geopolitical aggression. The thinking was its role is so pivotal, it makes it sort of untouchable. But now, some critics are arguing that, well, if you move some of that crucial production capacity elsewhere, like Arizona, does that potentially weaken that silicon shield, maybe make Taiwan more vulnerable? It's a really complex calculation. And there are definitely strong opinions on both sides, very hotly debated.
Yeah, it certainly underscores the enormous stakes involved here. Okay, shifting gears a bit. From the strategic angle to just the sheer technical challenge, the sources compare this to things like NASA's Apollo program or CERN's Large Hadron Collider. That really gives you a sense of the immense complexity, doesn't it?
It does. And what's particularly striking is the level of precision they need. These semiconductor plants, the fabs, they're described as being among the most sophisticated and demanding manufacturing operations globally, period. We're talking about environments that have to be way cleaner than even a hospital operating room, incredibly strict limits on any kind of particle contamination.
Wow. And the actual manufacturing processes,
Yeah.
they sound unbelievably
Yeah.
delicate even. You're essentially building these incredibly complex circuits, almost atom by atom, layer upon layer, at a scale that's just hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, and if we look at the actual physical site in Arizona, it's way more than just one factory building. The initial plans, they include 3 separate fabs, plus 2 advanced packaging facilities, and a major research and development center, too. It's really a comprehensive setup, an ecosystem.
Right. Now, advanced packaging, that might be a new term for some folks listening. What's the crucial role that plays in the whole process?
Okay, think of advanced packaging as the critical final steps. After the individual silicon chips themselves are made, it involves assembling them, testing them thoroughly, and then finally integrating those chips into the modules that actually go into our devices. It's a really complex, very technologically advanced part of the whole chain, and having those capabilities right there, co-located with the fabs, that's a huge advantage strategically and for efficiency.
Makes sense. And the list of companies lining up to use this place, it reads like a who's who of big tech, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Apple, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, AMD. That really just highlights how strategically vital this Arizona site is expected to be for the whole tech sector.
Absolutely. I mean, these are the companies pushing the envelope, right? At the
Right.
very forefront of innovation. Their reliance on what comes out of this Arizona facility, it's going to be substantial. And the physical size, too, over 1,100 acres, that's a pretty significant chunk of land out there in the desert.
And it's not just the TSMC buildings either. There are these adjacent industrial gas plants, big names, Linden Air Liquid. That might sound like a minor detail, but it actually points to the incredibly sophisticated, specialized infrastructure you need to support this kind of manufacturing.
Oh, definitely. And an interesting point there is the purity of the gases they need. Nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, helium, argon, carbon dioxide, all at ultra high purity levels. These gases are absolutely essential for different steps in making the chips. And the fact that these key suppliers are literally setting up shop right next door, it just underscores how interconnected and technologically deep this whole thing is.
Okay, turning to sustainability for a sec.
Yeah.
It is good to see that the facility has plans for significant renewable energy integration,
Okay.
including solar panels on all those big parking structures. Seems
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
smart move, especially with all that Arizona sunshine.
Yeah, and if you connect that back to the sheer operational demands,
Yeah.
you can see why energy efficiency and sustainability are so important. This place is going to run nonstop,
Mhm.
24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's a continuous manufacturing beast.
Right, and the work schedules for the employees in these places, they're usually pretty demanding, aren't they? We're talking those compressed 12-hour shifts, right? Intense work periods, then longer stretches off.
Yeah, that's pretty standard in the semiconductor world. It's just the nature of keeping that fabrication process going continuously. It definitely requires a highly dedicated, specialized workforce to keep those round-the-clock operations running smoothly.
Mhm. And speaking of the workforce, the economic impact projections are huge
Hmm.
for the local area, but also nationally. What are the numbers? Something like 40,000 construction jobs initially, then 6,000 direct high-tech manufacturing positions, plus thousands more in supporting roles.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is the ripple effect beyond those direct jobs. The source material talks about all the residential and commercial development booming in the areas around the facility, building housing, services, all to support this influx of skilled workers and their families. It's really changing the local economic landscape.
And here's something that really jumped out as an early success sign. Apparently, the Arizona facility achieved early production yield rates that actually beat comparable TSMC facilities back in Taiwan. That sounds like a big deal.
Oh, it is. That's a really important indicator because it shows TSMC can not only replicate its incredibly complex processes in a totally new place, but potentially even improve on them. It says a lot about their expertise, their systems, and the quality of the workforce they've managed to recruit and train there.
So, okay, stepping back, looking at the whole picture,
Hmm.
it's clear TSMC Arizona isn't just a factory, not by a long shot. As the sources put it, it's a powerful symbol of human ambition, technological mastery, strategic foresight, and geopolitical wisdom. Quite a statement.
It really feels like a calculated response to global challenges and opportunities, as one piece described it. It's about making sure this foundational industry, the one underpinning pretty much everything in our digital lives, continues to grow and becomes more resilient.
And by strategically spreading out their production, both geographically and technologically, TSMC isn't just securing its own future, they're fundamentally altering the global tech landscape in a really profound, lasting way. It's just a massive undertaking with consequences that will ripple out everywhere.
Yeah, so just to wrap up the key takeaways for everyone listening, we've covered the immense scale of this TSMC Arizona project, the truly cutting edge tech involved heading towards that 2 nanometer mark, its critical strategic importance for the U.S. for global supply chains, the whole geopolitical dimension, and of course the huge economic impact it's already having.
It really is an amazing convergence, isn't it? Technology, strategy, global cooperation, all happening on a scale you just don't see very often. It's like an epic story unfolding right now out there in the desert.
Absolutely. Which kind of leads to a final thought, maybe something for you to mull over. Given this big push towards localizing advanced manufacturing, like we're seeing with TSMC Arizona, what broader implications might that have for other critical industries down the line? What new challenges or maybe opportunities could pop up as more countries try to secure their own vital supply chains like this? Something to think about.